What's up, y'all? Hey, I hope that you both benefited from and grew in your own faith based off of the testimony of some of us here on staff at Crossroads. That was such an honor to be able to share those stories with you from all of us. So really continuing to pray that you guys were able to relate and be encouraged. This is a bit of a random devotional. It's not part of any series or anything like that. But this is just something that God has recently been teaching me, and man, I guess in a sense I'm continuing the testimony series because this is just another part of my testimony. But it relates to you as well. Before we get there, though, the main thing I want you to hear, if you pause the rest of the video, that's okay, is in order to hear God's voice, we need to sit before Him and ask Him to come near to us. In order to hear from God, we have to sit still before Him. This seems like a pretty basic concept. And then I was thinking about where we live, and I'm like, wait a second, maybe no, it's not. You and I live in Johnson County, or Wyandotte County, right? A few of us live in Leavenworth County. The reality is our lives are really busy. We go from here to there to here to there. In our free time, we pick up our phone or hop on the computer or watch TV or look at Facebook or Instagram or something along those lines. And it might not be verbal noise, but you and my life is filled with nothing but noise. I mean, I'm even sitting outside and you can hear behind me cars, you can hear behind me dump trucks and all this kind of stuff. The reality of you and my life is that you and I have to work really hard for silence. If you're a family person, this is even more accentuated. You have kids, right? And all of a sudden, kids are screaming, doing whatever, mom, dad, and you're like, I just want silence. The other day, I was getting ready for youth group, and a good portion of my sponsors weren't going to be at youth group. And a big portion of what we do is small groups within the youth group. And I was like, well, how am I going to run small groups, all this kind of stuff? And I just had to pause for a second, and God asked me to sit before Him in silence. And so I did. And He was like, I want you to put tables out. Instead of rows of chairs, I want you to do tables. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do tables. That's going to disrupt like a lot. Like, what? And in that moment of prayer with Him, as I was sitting before Him in silence, I could just almost audibly, it wasn't audibly, but you get what I'm saying when you have those moments in prayer. But God was just like, are you really gonna fight with me over whether I'm asking you to put tables out or not? Or are you just gonna be faithful? That was the question He asked me. You gonna be faithful or not? I was like, okay. So I put tables out, put chairs around the tables. And can I tell you what begun in my mind as a really stressful night of youth group, it was just me and Becca, turned into a beautiful night of students discipling one another as they went through small groups by themselves and as they led each other in small groups at their tables. I really wish that some of you could have been there to see it. It was beautiful to watch. Students encouraging one another, praying with one another, and leading each other in Bible study and in small group questions. It was awesome. How'd I get there? Well, God has been teaching me this thing recently. It comes from 2 Kings. You remember the story of Elijah. He's on the run. He's scared. And all of a sudden, I believe it's in 2 Kings 19, he has a moment where he's in a cave, and God comes in an unexpected way. There's a bunch of events that happen, but at the end of those events, Elijah hears a very small whisper. When you hear a whisper, you have to be silent to hear it. You have to be sitting there in expectation that somebody's going to speak, right? If I whisper to you right now, you might have to lean in and listen. But the reality is that you and my lives don't make much room for whisper, do they? And so my challenge, my encouragement is, in essence, be like Elijah. Maybe you're at a spot in your relationship with Jesus where it just feels dry, you haven't heard from Him in a while. Be like Elijah. Sit still before God amidst all the chaos and the noise and listen for the whisper of his still small voice. I guarantee you that if you're asking God to speak to you, he's going to speak to you, because that's the God we serve. The question you have to ask is are you going to silence your life enough to hear from him? You might be thinking, Phil, how do I do that? Well, there's a couple ways. And this is not an extensive list. We can go for a long time about this, but maybe when you get home from work or from wherever, you just sit in your car. Beck and I do this pretty often. We just pull into the garage and we just sit there and just let the silence soak in. Sometimes we ask for God, sometimes we don't. Maybe instead of turning off the TV, you just sit in your living room in silence, expecting God will talk to you. Maybe instead of scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you just sit in silence before your Creator. Maybe you go to a park and sit on a bench. Maybe you just take a break from I don't know, whatever activities that typically fill your life with noise. But the reality is that you and I have to fight for this. And so my encouragement is fight for silence in your life. Fight for moments when you get to sit before the Creator, just like Jesus did when he would go on the mountaintop and hear from our loving Father. Hope it's encouraging. Hope it's something that you can get on board with and say, yeah, I kind of want that in my life. I love you guys. I'd love to hear stories about what God tells you in these moments if you take up this challenge. So tell me stories. Comment below or stop me at church or if you're out and about and we see each other, stop me and say, Phil, this is what God told me in that moment of silence. Love you guys. Talk to you later.